Welcome to Term Sheet Teardowns. Today we're going to talk about pro-rata rights, what they are, how they work, and why they're important to you as both a venture investor or as an entrepreneur. All right, let's dive in. So to start this off, I want to tell this story about a friend of mine. He was an angel investor, invested in a bunch of great startups, and early on, he didn't really understand the importance of pro-rata rights. What happened there is he started making investments and he invested in this one company, and that company was just on a tear, and it was like growing super fast. But the downside was it required a lot of cash to keep growing. And so they would come back and require more cash. But because they were growing so quickly, the other thing that happened is there were a lot of investors chasing after them. And so they raised at higher and higher valuations and raised lots of cash, but he didn't have a pro rata right. So what would happen is these VCs would come in and they'd be like, we want to invest as much as possible. And my friend and some of the other angel investors didn't have any pro rata rights. And so they weren't able to put more money in. Anyways, fast forward, the company gets acquired, and it gets acquired for like a huge number. And my friend was thinking like, oh, like when I invested in the early round, I owned, like a pretty sizable portion of the business, like pushing 5% of the business. And so he thought, wow, they just got acquired for like billions of dollars. Like my stake is going to be worth tens of millions, maybe even $100 million. But what he didn't realize was that the company over time had raised so much money in subsequent rounds that he had gotten massively diluted. He thought like, oh, maybe I lost like 1%, 2%, something like that. But in reality, he ended up going from like 5% down to like sub 1% and had a much lower outcome than he had thought in his mind. Now, granted, he did just fine on the investment, but it wasn't the outcome that it could have been because he didn't have the pro rata rights.